Good afternoon, and welcome to Beverly's Historical Moments. This is a very, 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 very special show. We're coming to you in the afternoon, but you still get to see it on Facebook. This year we are celebrating the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. So I got very, very special guests with me today. We are the Walker County African American Historical and Alumni Association is in its 26th year of documenting, preserving, and educating ourselves and others on the history of African Americans of Walker County, Georgia, and Northwest Georgia. We want to thank our audience who joins us every time we have a show. Most of you joins us on Facebook, and we just love it. So you can watch it at your own leisure. This, I wanted to go through the first 13 colonies who came the first 13 states of the United States of America. And they were Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, good old Georgia, yay! Connecticut, Massachusetts, Maryland, South Carolina, North Carolina, New Hampshire, Virginia, and Rhode Island. They were the first 13 colonies to become the first states of the United States of America. Now, the Declaration of Independence was signed on September the 9th, 1776. But we're going to see we'll talk about it a little later to see if we were really independent from British just because they signed that piece of paper. We'll go into that in a minute. Rick, could you give me picture one, please? As usual, we'll do a little housekeeping, a few little commercials. This is our Memorial Park that we have broken ground now and finished stage 1 on West Villanelle in Lafayette, Georgia. So we're hoping to enter into phase 2 in July. We are still in very need of donations so that we can take it all the way to completion. Could you show me picture 2, please? You can donate by buying a brick for a loved one, and people are still sending in donations for bricks and telling me who they want the brick for, and that brick will be placed in the Memorial Park. Picture number 3, you can buy a paver, and the pavers are black granite. It's a little bit more expensive because they're a little bit larger. They're 12 by 12 inches, and you put a lot of words on that, and they'll be so beautiful in this black granite inside the park. All righty, now we'll go back to talking about the show. Our guests today will be our E.D. Ward scholarship winners. Our guest will be Miss Jane Shelton of the Daughters of the American Revolution, Miss Christine Evans of the Daughters of the Revolution, Mr. Skip, I'm sorry. I don't know why I had that thing. Mr. Skip Richardson from St. Augustine. He's a member of the First Families.
First African Families of English America.
The First African Families of English America. And then we'll have our feature speaker, Mrs. Gigi Bess Richardson, who's a member of the Daughters of the American Revolution, and she's a member of a lot of things, which I will go into a little later. Could you put up picture number 5, please, Rick? All righty, this is a picture of our museum mural that's located in Lafayette at 309 North Main Street. We invite you to come and visit us at any time on Fridays and Saturdays from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. or by appointment. You could call and make an appointment. Our admission is $10 for adults and $1 for those 18 and under. And also at any time you may donate. You see that QR scan there, and or you can mail it to us. Can you do picture number 6? And if we're not there, guess what? You can just use our audio solar voice box. That box will, you saw the mural. That box will tell you a story about each person in that mural. So you still could get a very good education on history for Walker County, even if we are closed. The next pictures, please. These are some of the books that we have authored. The United States Colored Troops of the Chattanooga and Northwest Georgia. A lot of people didn't know that the United States Colored Troops were in Northwest Georgia. They knew they was in Chattanooga because they took over Chattanooga after the Battle of Chickamauga. The Union Army was in charge of Chattanooga. But they didn't know that they came all the way down to the Peavine area in Walker County and down to Dalton. As a matter of fact, I think they fought 2 battles in Dalton. A lot of people did not know that. Could you put up the next picture, please? And we also have our Appalachian African Americans Northwest Georgia book that you can purchase. All these books can be purchased by contacting me or by coming to the museum on Fridays and Saturdays from 1 to 5 p.m. The next picture, please. Now, this is another thing that you can interact with if we're closed. This is our free little art gallery. It was put in place by the Roper Corporation. And what you do is you can leave a piece of art and take a piece of art at any time of the day, 24 hours a day. And it has a little geo locator on the bottom of it, such that if you can use your little geo system, children 15 and under know what I'm talking about, and you can be able to find the free little art gallery. So you can interact with that. Was that the last picture?
One more.
One more. And once again, this is the mural on our museum. You come into Lafayette, or Lafayette, whatever you want to call it, on Main Street, you will see that mural. Once you see that mural, you know you're there. You're at the museum. We're located right across from the Marsh House. All righty. I have one more little advertisement to do. It's for the Queen City Showcase. This is by the New Art Guild that is in Lafayette. They will have the Queen City Showcase. It'll be July the 10th and July the 11th at the historic Mars Theater. They will be featuring a lot of local talent there. And you can go to Facebook, or you can just go to Eventbrite and purchase your tickets at Eventbrite. And you don't want to miss this. It's just 2 days, July the 10th and July the 11th at the Mars Theater. You do not want to miss this. This is the Northwest Georgia Art Guild first event for their newly coming back together. Remember, they were together some time ago, but now they are newly back together. So we don't want to miss that event. All right, now, we'll talk about these E.D. Ward scholarships first. Because these young people, I might let them out early. I have to make up my mind. I might make them stay and learn a little history. I don't know. But Mr. E.D. Ward, you saw him on the mural. He was the gentleman there that was standing alone. He was one of the principals at our segregated African American schools. He was a principal at the school we call Wallaceville Elementary that was in North Walker. And he was the principal at Hill Elementary and High School that was in Lafayette, Georgia. We call that South Walker. Hill Elementary and High School went from 1st through the 12th grade. These were the only 2 schools they had for African Americans in Walker County until the schools became integrated in 1965 and 1966. And when we became an integrated system of everybody just going to school together and realizing we all are just one. And so these scholarships are in his honor, and we have 2 people here today that will be receiving these scholarships. Miss Naomi Thompson, could you stand up? Now, Naomi, you might want to put the speaker in your hand. Tell us a little little bit about yourself.
My name's Naomi Thompson, and I've been homeschooled since first grade. And I plan to attend Covenant College in the fall and major in early childhood education.
All righty then. And why did you decide to participate in competition for this scholarship?
I saw the scholarship was out for Lafayette High School and Ridgeland and homeschoolers, and a lot of scholarships just offer it for the high schools and not homeschoolers. So I thought it was an amazing opportunity for homeschoolers, and I thought the topic of AI was super interesting.
Yes, that's right. We use the topic of AI, and this year is the first year that we are doing homeschoolers, because we start thinking, which Heather made us start thinking, like they don't get scholarships offered to them because they're homeschooled. So we said, let's give them the opportunity.
Yes.
So this is your scholarship, Miss Naomi,
Thank you so much.
and this is your certificate. You all want to get a shot of her with her certificate. Hold your certificate up, ladies. There, Miss Naomi. Isn't that wonderful? So we're very proud of you, and we hope you continue to. I can't tell you her grade point average, but it was way high, way high. And she's done very well. Her essay was very, very well done. So thank you so very much.
Thank you so much.
All right. And then we have Miss Leslie Ramirez. Did I pronounce that correctly? Why don't you stand up for me? Y'all wave y'all little flag. Yeah. Now, Miss Leslie Ramirez, tell us a little bit about yourself. You can pick up your, yeah. Can you get it?
My name is Leslie Reynoso Ramirez. I went to Ridgeland High School for 3 years. I transferred towards the end of my freshman year, beginning of sophomore year, from Howard in Chattanooga. I transferred because we moved houses, and so at first it was a little hard for me to adjust, and I wasn't able to get into the healthcare field at the beginning, and so I was like, I don't know what to do. And then eventually towards the end of junior year, I figured out what I wanted to become, and so I'm gonna be going to Chat State to major in radiology, and then I'm hoping to go another year to get a certificate to be able to do ultrasounds. And then from there, I want to work for a year or two and then get travel contracts so I can travel around the world and be able to enjoy life before settling down.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So, Miss Leslie, here's your scholarship.
Thank you.
And here's your certificate. We're so happy to have you ladies. And get a shot, let them get a shot of you. You can put your, yes. Uh-huh. And they get a shot of you holding your certificate. We're so proud of these ladies that they were able, like I said, the essay was on AI, and we had quite a few people to apply, but they had the best essays, and we're very, very proud of them, and we're very happy to give them these scholarships. Hopefully it would help them out in a little bit, some way on their educational journey. All righty then, I'll go back and sit down.
Congratulations.
Y'all wave your flags. This is the day we wave our flags. Because we celebrating 250. We are very proud to be Americans. At least I am. I'm putting it on y'all too. All righty then. All right now. I'm going to introduce you to some of these adults now. They're going to tell me a little bit about themselves, and they're going to hold up something else we've got here. We're going to start with now y'all know Miss Jane Shelton. She's been on my show several times, but she's going to tell us a little bit of why she's here and what organization she's representing.
Well, I'm glad to be here, and I'm a retired educator, and I'm a member of the DAR for about 22 years. I decided that I wouldn't be able to be active until after I retired, so that's when I decided to just go right ahead and join, and I've enjoyed and learned so much during the years. It's a lot of service to the community that I'm proud to be a part of, and the African American Association and Beverly are just so much also committed to service and in the community, and our DAR chapter, the William Marsh of Lafayette, is proud to be a partner with her in special projects and just things that come up that we have a common interest in. I'm glad to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. And next to her, we have Miss Christine Evans. She's also a member of the DAR.
Hi, I'm Christine Evans. I recently moved to Lafayette, Georgia from upstate New York, where I was associated with the Canona Avoca Canisteo chapter there, and I've joined the William Marsh in Lafayette. I'm also active in the American Legion Auxiliary, and I'm just glad to be here.
All right, now, wonderful. Now we're going to skip our featured speaker and go down to Mr. Skip Richardson. Mr. Skip, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I guess so.
You guess so. You better wave that flag and introduce yourself.
Okay.
And tell people what you're members of.
Okay. My name's Skip Richardson. I'm a member of Sons and Daughters of the Middle Passage. And my wife is Gigi, and I'm just most of the time a Hodar with her because she's in the DAR, and I'm her transportation.
Don't you own a bookstore and
Yes.
a museum?
We own a bookstore and a museum in St. Augustine, Florida.
And what's the name of it?
Bess Richardson African Diaspora and Literature and Cultural Museum.
Right, isn't that wonderful? And, yeah, they all way up here in northwest Georgia from St. Augustine, Florida, and we're glad to have them with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, we'll go to our next part, what I call our featured speaker, and we will be asking her questions and letting her speak on different things. She just shine while I'm talking about her. Put your camera on Miss Gigi Best. She's the lady with all these little medals. Do you ladies, Miss Shelton and Miss Evans, y'all have a lot of medals like that?
I
Not
don't.
10 minutes.
Well, I went on a vacation in St. Augustine, Florida, and whenever my husband and I go, we went to visit my husband's cousin, and whenever we go on vacations, I hunt out small museums and bookstores and things, and I wandered into their bookstore and museum, and there she was, and we got to talking, and she said, well, Beverly, I'm a member of the Daughters of the American Revolution. I said, you what? Now, y'all might say, well, why am I excited about that? I personally had never met an African American who was a member of the Daughters of the American Revolution. I have met some who were trying to get their ancestry together to join, but they were having difficulty. And then she said, Beverly, I'm also a member of the colonial dames of the 17th century. I said, you what? I said, she tell me one more thing, I'm gonna fall out on the floor. But she did. She said, I am a member of the Daughters of Union Veterans of the Civil War. I'm a member of the Sons and Daughters of the Order of the First Families of North Carolina and New England Women. And she says, I'm a member of the Sons and Daughters of United States Middle Passage. And she said, and I'm a historian of coastal Georgia Gullah Geechee culture. And she has written books, which she was our featured speaker on Saturday, and I think she sold quite a few of her books. And I have a couple of them. This one's called Discovering the Melungeons. She wrote all about her family, because her family, you know, she and I have a lot of things in common. We love history, but my family are Melungeons also. So she wrote that book featured in that. And
Somebody's calling me.
And so we are, excuse us for that little interruption. She wrote this wonderful book that I've read, and it's just wonderful, Discovering the Melungeons. And she wrote another book. Don't I have two of your books?
You have, this one is getting ready to come out, but the first one was Thomas the Melungeon.
Yes, Thomas the Melungeon. I have that one also. So we have those two things in common, that we have Melungeon ancestries. And I will let Miss Best take about 5 minutes before we start asking her questions, just to tell us a little bit about yourselves, and then we'll start asking some questions. You take up 5 minutes to tell us about yourself, young lady.
Okay. As Beverly said, I have been involved in genealogy since 2007, when I retired from civil service. I love discovering my family. I'm actually in 12 hereditary societies. And if you don't know what a hereditary society is, it's you have proved your lineage through your ancestors, taking you back to where you can find the earliest. My earliest European ancestor came to the colonies in 1622. His name is Thomas Best. I'm a Best all the way down my line. And I also, my first traceable ancestor of African descent is Margaret Cornish, who was in the colonies in 1619. And she was one of those ancestors who were stolen from Angola and brought to the area that is now Fort Monroe. She was an indentured servant. There was no chattel slavery until about 1640. So I have Quakers, I have European, I have Native American. In fact, the Lumbee tribe that I descend from just got their national recognition. I have probably a total of 20 men who served in the American Revolution, and also one of my ancestors, he was in the War of 1812. So you hear a lot about people not being patriotic, but I have an ancestor who was in every single war, all the way back, starting with the Revolution, and my father was in World War II, so all through that time. So I love genealogy. I love finding these ancestors. Went to England, found my ancestor that was born in 1569. My husband's ancestors also in England. So I tell people, be careful how you treat people, because you don't know who's in your family. And just because they look a certain way today, that does not mean that's what your ancestor looked like.
Now, isn't that wonderful? But Miss Bess Richardson, can you tell us, what is an indentured servant?
An indentured servant, it originally started in the colonies when they were trying to build Jamestown and build the colonies. And an indentured servant is a person who sometimes voluntarily, sometimes not voluntarily, ended up in the colonies, and they were promised, if they were given like 5 to 7 years of their work, then, and Thomas was felling trees, then they would be given a piece of land, and they would be given clothes, and sometimes a small stipend. The disadvantage is that they were not allowed to marry. They could not leave their quote-unquote master. And then the bad, I always like to talk about the good and the bad, but some of them were kidnapped from England. Somebody might say to a person, oh, you stole an apple. So you can either go to the English prison or you can go to the colonies. So the other thing with indentured servant, because I am descendant from many free people of color, in fact, my Lucas Locus line was never enslaved. And they are descendant from the Lumbee Indians. And what happened if a child was born out of wedlock or the father died, those children would be indentured. And I had one of my ancestors who was indentured as young as 4 years old. And people would take them in because there was no such thing as welfare back then, and the church ran everything. So the church would take these children and indenture them to, it could be a family member, it could be someone else who promised to give them a trade.
Now, what is the big difference between an indentured person and a person that was a slave?
Oh, some of the indentured people, like I found records from my great-grandfather, my 9th great-grandfather, who said that he was mistreated, he was hardly given anything to eat. If you think of the starving time in Jamestown, he was in that time. The similarities were they could not marry, they had to serve a certain amount of time. But what happened is when the English decided that they were gonna, because the people of English descent, which my ancestor was one of them, could write home and say, I'm being mistreated. And so it became a kind of like a blight. So what they did was then they said, well, let us indenture or enslave some Native Americans. But because the Native Americans, the Nansemond Indians, knew the colony, they knew the community, they knew the rivers, they knew the lakes, they knew how to run away. So then someone got this wonderful idea. They thought, well, let's take some people who cannot get back to where they came from. So when the African slave trade happened, then England, France, Spain, all these different countries got involved in enslaving people, and they could be sold, they could be traded, and most of the time they were mistreated.
Now, what's the name of the Order of Daughters of the American Revolution that you're a member, Ms. Bass Richardson?
I belong to the Maria Jefferson chapter in St. Augustine, Florida. And before that, I was in the Caladesi chapter in Tampa, Florida.
All right. Now, what we all know that African Americans were in Walker County, Rome, Georgia, Floyd County, and even in Chattanooga with DeSoto way back in the 1500s. Why is this 1619 thing so important that everybody be talking about 1619?
Mainly because you hear people say that 1619 was the beginning of enslavement in America. It was not. The city I live in, they call it the ancient city, is in St. Augustine. And they brought enslaved people with them. In fact, a child was born around 1566, and they brought people in who were enslaved. The difference of the 1619, these were people who were stolen from Angola, brought to the Hampton Roads area, but there was no chattel slavery in 1619 under the British.
Correct. So, 1619 is the beginning of the British English, and that's what we're taught in history. We're taught all about the British and English. We're not taught too much about the Spaniards. The Spaniards had already been here for almost 100 years before the British got here.
Yes.
And so that's the reason they don't, when I tell people, well, the African Americans were here in the 1500s and they came up through him, they look at me and say, Beverly, you don't know what you're talking about. I said, oh my God, yes I do. So, they don't know all of this history, Now, you, Miss Richardson, these young ladies here, I've known Jane for 20-some odd years. She's been on every program. She's helped me. She's partnered with me in so many programs. It's a shame. And I just love her, love her, love her. And she dates her people back to 1619 in Virginia. What were their names?
Pace, P-A-C-E.
Pace. Did you hear anything about any Europeans named Pace during your during your search in 1619?
No.
No, because both of y'all had ancestors at the same spot during the same time. And I was wondering did you run across, what was the name of your ancestor that was there?
Her name was Margaret Cornish, and it was also the Goins. They were all of African descent, but of course there were Europeans there because Margaret ended up working on what they called the plantation then. It was very small, the Lieutenant Shepherd's plantation. And when people say they were enslaved, I have found records in the court records, because back then the church ran everything. So I was able to find in the court records where she was granted her freedom, because when you're indentured, you don't have any freedom. They send people to find you if you run away. They tell you can't be married. So when she was on Lieutenant Shepherd's plantation, she was given a document, and I have it in our museum, that says she was released from paying taxes because of her age. Mm-hmm. And if she had been enslaved, she would not have been paying taxes.
Now, indentured servants, they have an end to their service, which is usually 21 years or whatever, whereas slaves, there's no end. You're slave, you're slave, you're slave, unless your owner decides they want to grant mercy and let you free. However, some owners will allow their slaves to buy themselves and become free. There was a lot of different ways to become free. And I'd like for you all to know that my research in Walker County during the era of enslavement, there were free African Americans that were living in Walker County. There were free ones. Now, Miss Christine, you've been in the DAR for 7 years? Now, how did you become, what did you trace your lineage back to become a member of the Daughters of the American Revolution?
My ancestor is Coonrod Loeffler, and he's buried in Rushville, New York. And my aunt was a member, and then my mother became a member, and then my mom signed me up. That's how I became a member.
And he dates back to Virginia?
New Jersey.
New Jersey. Oh, isn't that wonderful? Oh, it's wonderful. Now, one of you tell me, we are celebrating 250 years of signing of the Declaration of Independence. Miss Gigi, did our independence become on that day that letter was written?
No, it did not.
Mm-mm.
And you will hear Frederick Douglass say, what is the 4th of July to me? Because people were still enslaved. People who were enslaved a lot of times were promised by Europeans, if you go to the war for me and serve, if you survive, I will set you free. Some of them survived and were not set free. They were re-enslaved. So you look at that and you look at the fact, like I said, that I had people who were, and I guess a lot of people don't realize that, like one of my ancestors, several of them were in Virginia, and they were free men of color because they were a mixture of British, African, and also Native American. And many of them married European wives, and Virginia told them, you can't stay in Virginia. And if you do, somebody who's supporting you will have to pay a fine. So, in the actual indenture years, those people signed up for indenture to Europeans because it was typically 5 to 7 years. And so they figured, well, I can get some land, I can come to this new country, but it wasn't all that it was cracked up to be, because some of those people who bought them here were very mean to them. And when you bring an indentured servant, you typically get 50 acres of land per person, including your children, and you get 50 acres of land for each enslaved person that you have.
I would like to point out that the Europeans that lived in the British colonies, the 13 colonies that I named, at the signing of the Declaration of Independence, they wasn't free either. They were still under the British control. When that Declaration of Independence was signed, it was a letter that they were sending to Great Britain, said they want to be free. But what happened was, that started a war. And they were not free until 7 or 8 years later at the signing of the Treaty of France of Paris. Was it the Treaty of Paris? The Treaty of Paris. So America, we didn't gain our independence. The 4th of July, we celebrated, but we weren't independent on the 4th of July. We had just wrote that letter, but we still was under British control. We had to fight, no matter what culture you were, to get your freedom for another 8 years to get your freedom. And we was not free until the signing of the Treaty of Paris. I think that was about 1750 something, 8 years later.
1776.
That was 1784, 85. That's what it was. Because that 1776 signing of that Declaration of Independence did not free anybody. You know, that would be like somebody in jail said, I'm going to sign this letter and I'm free today, get me out of here. That's not what happened. That's not what happened. You had 8 years of the American Revolutionary War to fight to get your freedom. So everybody has to fight for their freedom if they want to be free. And the British colonies wanted to be free, and once they signing of the Treaty of Paris, then they became the 13 first states, the United States of America, with the first 13 states that I told you about. Now, there is another interesting thing about the, tell us about how many, Ms. Richardson, about how many Africans fought in the American Revolution.
There were thousands that fought, and I don't know the exact number, there is one somewhere, but there were so many that fought for the American Revolution, and some of them were not, many of them were not enslaved. My ancestors, like I said, a lot of them were free men of color, and when they fought, one of my ancestors, Ishmael Roberts, his father was born, his name was Kenton Roberts. His father was born in 1724. He fought, he died, and he left land. Now, I looked for that land and I couldn't find it, but what it wasn't in North Carolina. It was in Tennessee, I believe, because they had more land. And then his son, Ishmael, fought, and he got 640 acres of land. Mm-hmm. He was a land baron. When I was looking through the records, and this is something I tell people all the time, you have to, I've done my DNA on several lines, but before I did the DNA, I went to the courthouses, I found the land records, I found how Ishmael had all this land, and he ended up sending his sons to Indiana with the Quakers because he was afraid of what was going to happen in North Carolina, that his sons would be mistreated. So there's a place in Indiana named after the Roberts. There's another one. What happened is the land got so scarce and people started coming in, affecting them, that some of them moved to Ohio.
I'm gonna have to talk to you a little bit more about those Roberts, because I know Roberts in Indiana and Ohio.
Okay.
Yes, I'm gonna talk to you a little bit more about that.
Yes.
So, yes. Now, another thing I wanted people to understand is that during the American Revolution, at first, George Washington did not want the Africans to fight, whether they were slave or free. However, as things progressed, they needed bodies to fight. And they saw that Africans could fight and fight very well. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna ask one of our teenagers here, do they teach you in school who the first person that was killed in the American Revolution, what ethnicity he was? They don't think.
I don't think so.
Do you want to tell them, Mr. Gigi? Or do you want to tell them, Skip?
No, let her do
Let Miss Gigi tell them. The first person that was killed in the American Revolution, what was his name?
Crispus Attucks.
And what was his ethnicity?
He was African and Native American.
He was African and Native American. And he was the first, it was at the Boston Massacre, he was the first person considered to be killed during the American Revolution. And he was part African and part Native American. And they usually teach that. That's the one thing they usually do teach about the American Revolution, and that it's multicultural. They usually teach about Crispus Attucks. So I'm surprised you all didn't get that. Usually you get that in your 12th grade American history.
Not in New Jersey.
Oh,
Not
Lord.
in New Jersey. That's where I was raised.
But also, this one thing that that's very, very interesting that I think people would like to know is that during the American Revolution, during the following wars like the Spanish American War, First and Second World Wars, those military men were segregated according to color. However, during the American Revolution, the military battalions, they were not segregated, they were integrated. Even when George Washington decided that he was going to have the African battalions, and he did one in Rhode Island that was African battalion, it even had white European culture people as part of the soldiers. They were not, have you ever seen George Washington on this boat crossing the Delaware? There's an African sitting right there in that boat.
Yes.
In every picture.
Yes.
He had them in his battalions. Once they decided they fight well and they needed them, they did not segregate them out. Then afterwards, we went through all this stuff about people because different colors had to be slaves and blah, blah, blah. And then after freedom, then they start separating and say, you got to be here and you got to be there. It came later out of foolishness, just foolishness. But during the Korean War, that's when they decided that foolishness stopped and they did not segregate the soldiers anymore. They were integrated. And so I thought it was very interesting when I found out during the Revolutionary War that the battalions were integrated. That was very important. And Miss Gigi Best said she don't know how many were, but there was about 9,000 that they said,
9,000.
And 5,000 were combat ready Africans, and that fought. And the difference between the African people, soldiers who fought, and the European soldiers who fought is the European soldiers had farms and things they had to go back to and take care of. So they signed up for 3 and at the most 6 months, and then they were gone. But the Africans, they signed up usually for the duration of the war.
And fought in many battles.
Because they had no farms and whatnot to go back to, and they were fighting for that promise that if you fight, we'll let you not be enslaved anymore, you'll be free. But one state that was very naughty, and that was Virginia, they went back and enslaved them, and that was very naughty for them to do that. They didn't hold them. But I want you to also to know this, is that the British were smart too. They were smart. They knew that those people who were enslaved in the southern states, like Virginia and Georgia and North and South Carolina, they knew them people want to be free. So they said, hey, you fight on our side, we can get y'all free. Mm-hmm. They pulled 100,000 enslaved people to their side to fight so they could get their freedom. And that's when George Washington really said, oh, we got to stop this, because I think out of South or North Carolina, they pulled out 25% of their enslaved Africans to fight for the British. And George Washington said, we got to stop this. We got to start promising freedom. Are they going to, strip us of all our man force? So that's how all that there happened. So that they had Africans on both sides, but they had the French and the Spanish fighting on the American side to help them to get their freedom. So these are wonderful things that we learn about. But I want to ask Miss Gigi, and she's got me interested now because I've got my history, family history back to the early 1700s, and we are Adams, and I was checking into a person that was famous back in that day, Adams, that seemed like they're trying to hint that we came from. But how do you feel, Miss Gigi, being a member of the Daughters of the American Revolution and all that your family and ancestors have contributed to this nation, of the things that you are seeing now happening in our country? Well, we're not going to name them, but just...
No. And my birthday was yesterday, too.
And yesterday was Flag Day, and yesterday was somebody else's birthday, and it was your birthday, too. Happy birthday, Miss Gigi. Happy birthday.
Thank you. And the irony, I said, God put me here because June 14th is Flag Day.
Flag Day. That's when we got our flag.
When Betsy Ross made the flag, it was on June 14th. So one of the things, like I said, you have to read the records, and it actually says that my ancestor, Ishmael Roberts, his commander, because there were usually European commanders of these units that he was in the 10th Cavalry in North Carolina, but it says they gave him a letter that he was leaving Valley Forge. So I have an ancestor, a free man of color, who was at Valley Forge.
So Miss Gigi, she inspires me now to go back and see if I can connect my family to some of this history, mm-hmm. and see if I can be, because I always thought, well, I can't be a member of the Daughters of the American Revolution, but I could be.
Yes.
I just need to go, because if I can get my history back that far, which I can, to the 1600s, I never know.
Yes.
Especially now, if you live in Walker County, I want you to know that the Europeans got Cherokee land lotteries. And the reason they got them is because most of their ancestors fought in the American Revolution. Is that right, Miss James?
Fits together.
That's right. And they were given first choice to get these land lotteries. So if your family goes back over 100 years in Walker County or in Northwest Georgia, you might be able to be a member of the Daughters or Sons of the American Revolution. Just check into your history a little bit. And I think that's a very good thing to be a member of the Daughters. Now, we know the Daughters or Sons of the American Revolution. Now, we know, what I want you to explain to me, Miss Bess Richardson, we know there was this little hiccup way back in the day with Miss, with an opera star, Miss, what was her name?
Marian Anderson.
Okay, but the DAR isn't like that now, is it?
No. Mm-hmm. In fact, I have a new pen, and we were originally unofficial, called the Daughters of the Forgotten Patriots. And now there's a branch of that called Daughters of Color, because they realized that there's many of us who, now the two on the bottom of my pins here is my 5th great grandfathers, And one of them is a Best, Benjamin Best, and the other one is Lemuel Hardy. But what happened is, when you do your ancestry, like you said, the people who fought, you have to prove generation by generation. And the way I was able to prove the best ancestry was my European second great grandfather raised his two children of African descent. Now, they weren't enslaved. Chapin was born in 1869 after emancipation, and his sister was, her name, she was born in 1870. But because Theophilus Best, who had been a Civil War Confederate soldier, raised those two children and gave them each 40 acres. And that is still part of that land in North Carolina, in Goldsboro, North Carolina.
Well, we're getting close to having to wrap this up, but before we wrap it up, I'd like to give Ms. Richardson a certificate of scholar from the Walker County African American Historical Alumni Association. We're so proud that she was able to come to be with us. And, you know, all these little different, I want me some of those. All these little different pins for all her accomplishments. We're so very proud of her. And did you ladies, you young ladies that are going off to college, did you learn anything? Was it interesting? Was it boring? I know you wouldn't admit it. But I hope that you all enjoyed it and that you learned a little bit something new to take with you off to college. And the lady who's going to Covenant College, they do offer a course in African American Studies under Miss Alicia Jackson. She's very well. I hope you all will come down and visit the museum and learn more about the Native Americans. I have some things in there, like I said, De Soto, about the Latin Americans and the African Americans that are in my museum, because it's a multicultural museum, because Northwest Georgia was found by a multicultural group of people. I want to thank everybody for coming. Ms. Shelton, Ms. Evans, Ms. Bess Richardson, Ms. Leslie, Ms. Naomi, and Mr. Skip Richardson. Thanks everybody for coming. Let's all wave our flags, and I'll see you next time. Thank you. Good evening.